Welcome to the first edition of Under the Radar, where I attempt to bring you stories that you may have missed during the week because you're all such hard-working individuals with better things to do. So let's just dive straight in with the first story. Left-wing Dutch vegan who moved to Switzerland is denied a Swiss passport because she's too annoying. Oh, sweet justice. Now, if you've ever met one of those militant vegans, then you probably don't need any further explanation of why people don't want her around. But let's see why she was officially denied a passport. A left-wing Dutch vegan who campaigned against cowbells in the Swiss village where she lives has had a request for a Swiss passport thrown out after annoying the locals. Nancy Holten, who was born in the Netherlands but moved to Switzerland at the age of 8, is a fluent speaker of Swiss, German, and has children who are Swiss nationals. And she wanted a Swiss passport herself, but was refused after locals who were consulted about her request said they were fed up of her challenging Swiss traditions by campaigning against the use of cowbells. The campaign against cowbells by the 42-year-old vegan and animal rights activist has made her unpopular in the Alpine Confederation. Of course, it should go without saying that if you're a vegan, you're almost certainly going to be an animal rights activist. And I think Dr. Random had some words of wisdom for the more extreme types during a recent tweet storm. Exactly. And now the majority of residents from Gipf Oberfrick in the canton of Aargau have successfully blocked her second attempt to get a Swiss passport. The Residents' Committee argued that if she does not accept Swiss traditions and the Swiss way of life, she should not be able to become an official national. Local politician Tanja Suter agreed with the majority of the town's citizens and said Holten had a big mouth, saying she did not deserve to get a Swiss passport if she irritates us and does not respect our traditions. I can think of a few other nations that could take a leaf out of Switzerland's book when it comes to immigration policies. The case has now been transferred to the cantonal government in Aargau, which can overrule the decision and still grant her a Swiss passport despite the objections of the locals. Local residents in Switzerland often have a say in citizenship applications, which are decided by the cantons and towns where the applicants live, rather than the federal government. I bet there are some towns in France and Germany that wish they had a say in who can and can't reside there. So whilst we're on the theme of annoying women, Women's March on Washington opens contentious dialogues about race. Now this is from the New York Times, so they take a slightly different angle than the one I'm going to take. Many thousands of women are expected to converge on the nation's capital for the Women's March on Washington the day after Donald J. Trump's inauguration. Jennifer Willis no longer plans to be one of them. Ms. Willis, a 50-year-old wedding minister from South Carolina, had looked forward to taking her daughters to the march. Then she read a post on the Facebook page for the march that made her feel unwelcome because she is white. The post, written by a black activist, does that make her a blacktivist? From Brooklyn, who is a march volunteer, advised white allies to listen more and talk less. It also chided those who it said were only now waking up to racism because of the election. You don't just get to join because now you're scared too, read the post. I was born scared. Now, you won't find a better example of the toxicity of identity politics. Basically, this is a my oppression is worse than your oppression because intersectionality argument. You're an oppressed woman, but I'm an oppressed black woman. Oh, Jesus. Stung by the tone, Ms. Willis cancelled her trip. This is a women's march, she said. We're supposed to be allies in equal pay, marriage, adoption. Why is it now about white women don't understand black women? Well, putting aside the fact that the causes around which you are supposed to be allied are bullshit, you, Ms. Willis, obviously haven't been paying attention. It's all about where you are on the oppression stack and acknowledging your privilege according to the theory of intersectionality. Now, I'm not going to go into intersectionality, but I will play a clip from Christina Hoff Sommers about what intersectionality can lead to.
Victimization confers wisdom, moral authority, even prestige. So in places where intersectionalists gather, on campuses and social media, there's now a mad scramble for victim status. Now, I first saw this theory in action way back in 1992 at the annual meeting of the National Women's Studies Association in Austin, Texas. The conference organizers had imbibed the lessons of intersectional feminism, and they were struggling to honor all identities. So the participants were told to assemble in small groups based on their healing needs. So there were groups for Asian women, African American women, elderly women, Jewish women, disabled women, fat women. None of these groups proved stable. The fat group polarized into gay and straight factions. Members of the black lesbian group could not get along. Those who had white partners were called out for their privilege and had to form a separate group. And new identities emerged. A group of women with allergies formed a caucus and issued a set of demands about not wearing dry-cleaned clothing or hairspray. It was a conference of scholars, but we didn't resolve our differences through rational discussion. Instead, intersectionality created new reasons for anger and devoured itself. The conference ended with songs and healing rituals.
Yeah, I think I'm going to need a healing ritual after that. And I encourage you to watch Christina Hofsummer's full video on intersectionality, linked below. Now, since it's only one day after the inauguration of President Trump, I thought this story would be very fitting. The Clinton Foundation shuts down Clinton Global Initiative. Ah, yes. The Clinton Foundation's long list of wealthy donors and foreign government contributors during the 2016 elections provoked critics to allege conflicts of interest. Clinton's partisans defended the organization's charitable work and dismissed claims that it served as a means for the Clintons to sell off access, market themselves on the paid speech circuit, and elevate their brand as Hillary Clinton campaigned for the presidency. I mean, why would they do that? That's just crazy talk. But as soon as Clinton lost the election, many of the criticisms directed toward the Clinton Foundation were reaffirmed. Foreign governments began pulling out of annual donations, signaling the organization's clout was predicated on donor access to the Clintons rather than its philanthropic work. In November, the Australian government confirmed it has not renewed any of its partnerships with the scandal-plagued Clinton Foundation, effectively ending 10 years of taxpayer-funded contributions worth more than $88 million. And yes, who benefited most from that? Julia Gillard. The government of Norway also drastically reduced their annual donations, which reached $20 million a year in 2015. And there's not really much to say other than that, is there? If a big part of the Clinton Foundation wasn't predicated on pay for play, then why are donations drying up? Actually, sorry, there is one more thing to say about this. That's better. Now, speaking of Trump, the next story involves his Education Secretary designate Betsy DeVos, who was asked in her confirmation hearing by Bob Casey whether she would uphold the Education Department's 2011 Dear Colleague letter regarding campus sexual assault, and also threw in the now universally debunked 1 in 5 statistic just for good measure. The Dear Colleague letter, you may recall, required colleges to use a lower standard of proof when adjudicating sexual assault cases. Now, as most of the potential appointees are in these hearings, they try to be very measured in their responses. But I think DeVos's response should be seen as offering a glimmer of hope when she said, quote, "If confirmed, I look forward to understanding the past actions and the current situation better, and to ensuring that the intent of the law is actually carried out in a way that recognises both the victim, the rights of the victims, as well as those who are accused," she said. So as the story noted, that's about as close to a defence of civil rights for accused students as DeVos could probably give in that setting. Just mentioning the rights of the accused is a move in the right direction. And the next story should give you even more hope about the state of college campuses. An Emory College professor is calling for abandonment of the term microaggression and a moratorium on microaggression training programs in a new research study. Scott Lilienfeld argues that none of the 5 core premises underlying microaggression theory are supported by research, and concludes that the concept could end up doing more harm than good. The peer-reviewed study by psychology professor Scott O. Lilienfeld, titled Microaggressions Strong Claims Inadequate Evidence, was published earlier this week in the journal Perspectives on Psychological Science. One of the core premises of microaggression theory, for example, is the idea that unintentional slights exert an adverse impact on recipients' mental health. But Lilienfeld argues that it is premature to advocate strong causal assertions regarding the ties between microaggressions and mental health, because research into that question has historically neglected the impact of confounding factors. Lilienfeld also called into question the belief that microaggressions are interpreted negatively by most or all minority group members. There is no systematic research support for this hypothesis, he points out. Microaggression theory largely overlooks the possibility, indeed the probability, that individual differences colour recipients' interpretations of and reactions to microaggressions. Yes, so instead of treating minority groups as some kind of hive mind, how about we recognise that everyone is different and that what triggers some special snowflake can be seen as completely trivial to others in the same group. Additionally, despite the belief that microaggressions reflect implicitly prejudicial and implicitly aggressive motives, Lilienfeld counters that there's no evidence that microaggressions are correlated with indicators of either prejudice or aggression in deliverers. Lilienfeld told Campus Reform that he became interested in microaggressions after he discovered that some colleges were telling students that statements such as, "I believe that America is the land of opportunity and I believe that the most qualified person should get the job," constituted microaggressions. And this is the way that academics, like those that have joined Jonathan Haidt's Heterodox Academy, have to attack this stupidity, because most of it is just asserted, and then you are shouted down if you don't agree with it, because they know it's not defensible by evidence-based argument. Now, I thought I'd finish off with a clip from that same Betsy DeVos confirmation hearing I mentioned before. This really should be going viral as the ultimate way to shut down socialist loonbags.
Will you work with me and others to make public colleges and universities tuition-free through federal and state efforts?
Senator, I think that's a really interesting idea, and it's really great to consider and think about. But I think we also have to consider the fact that there's nothing in life that's truly free.
So let me know what you thought of the first edition of Under the Radar in the comments. I know it was a little US-centric, but it was the week of the inauguration after all. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you feel especially generous, consider supporting me on Patreon. See you next time.